Digital Innovation Conference, V2. How many people were here last year? Nice. How many people are new this year? Oh, even nicer. Thank you. And welcome and welcome back to all of you. We really appreciate the opportunity to put this conference on, and we hope everybody finds it an extremely valuable experience as we go through our 2.5 days here, or 2 days. To get us kicked off at this conference, we are going to have an initial keynote address from Pierre Villere. Pierre is the president and senior managing partner of Allen-Villere Partners, an investment banking firm with a national practice in construction materials. He has spent over 4 decades as an investment banker, serving middle market companies in their mergers and acquisitions, restructuring, and financing needs. Pierre is a regular columnist in Rock Products and Concrete Products magazine. He's done a number of these talks, and they're always very informative. Please give a warm welcome to Pierre Villere.
Thank you very much. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge my 2 editors, Don Marsh over here from Concrete Products, who's peering down at his camera right now, and of course Mark Kahar at Rock Products. It's been a pleasure to write for both these editors for many, many years, and it's the same 2 guys, which was not my previous experience in writing magazine articles. So anyway, thank you very much for letting me contribute every month. I appreciate it. I just want to start by saying that this meeting is going to be conducted in accordance with AggNexus and SEMCO's antitrust policy statements and policy position. It's important to know because we are discussing some numbers in here, and we take antitrust compliance very seriously. So if at any time anybody is uncomfortable with the direction the presentation is going in, please raise your hand. We'll address your concerns before we continue on. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Let me see if I get this cursor off the screen. There we go. Here's what we're going to talk about this afternoon. Is there a recession on the horizon, or is this a temporary slowdown? We're going to talk about gross domestic product and consumer sentiment. Those are 2 big numbers and big forces in the economy, and I'm going to explain that in much more detail. We're going to talk a little bit about the policy changes of the current administration in Washington. We're then going to segue into a discussion of the AVP, Allen-Villere Partners Pulse Index, which we publish in conjunction with our friends at Rock Products magazine. We'll talk about market activity, and then we're going to switch gears and look at some industry data. We're going to look at ready-mix concrete and construction aggregates demand for the United States over the next few years. We're going to talk a little bit about technology, and there is one persistent economic tailwind that's going to bode well for our economy for many years to come. So I love this part of my presentation because nobody's ever gotten this right. What is the biggest industry in the country? Can you guess? Can anybody guess? What? The federal government's is a good one too. And I hear aerospace, I hear automobiles, I hear home building, and it's none of those. It is the shopper pushing the grocery cart through Walmart. The American consumer, he or she represents 70% of America's entire GDP. So for every dollar we produce, 70 cents of it comes out of the individual pockets of the 340 million Americans who populate our country. Consumer sentiment or confidence is the key driver to the entire U.S. economy. Sentiment is self-fulfilling. My wife says she's going to put this on my tombstone. She's heard it so many times. It's a very true statement in understanding what moves the economy. with the American consumer representing 70% of GDP, mood swings can have a huge impact, albeit sometimes temporarily, on the economy. So before I get into that slide, I want to go back to this for just 1 second. And we have currently have a phenomenon occurring here in this country that's a little unusual. So let me take you to 2008 and 2009 for those of you who were working during those recessionary years. So this is what happened to the American consumer. So everyday Joe has got a nice house in the suburbs in anywhere USA. And his nice house in the suburbs has a neighbor on one side whose house is in foreclosure. The guy across the street has lost his job. The lady next door has lost her job. There have been 2,000 layoffs at his company, and he's nervous. So what does he do? He and his wife close their wallets, and they stop spending money. And that's what plunged us more than anything else into the 2008 Great Recession, the worst recession since the Great Depression. So fast forward, what happens? Gets to be 11, 12, 13. Economy's getting better, slowly repairing itself little by little. And guy across the street gets a job. His wife gets a better job with a big raise. The house next door sells twice for way more than what it was foreclosed on. And the lady on this side is driving a new Mercedes-Benz. So what does he do? He opens his wallet back up. That is the whole idea of it's his sentiment. And that's repeated over and over again by hundreds of millions of Americans. So let me show you a little bit about GDP. As you'll see here, this is the 22 to 25 GDP percentage change. This is since COVID. And before COVID, when the economy was steady Eddie, hitting on all 8 cylinders, smoothly tuned, all of the economists and political pundits were saying, and Wall Streeters were saying, oh, we're doing great. Our GDP is growing at 2% a year, 2.2% a year. We're doing great. They thought 2% growth was fantastic. We had 6% under Ronald Reagan at one point, but everybody was happy with 2% growth. And then the pandemic hits. Look at what happens coming out. So this is the second quarter of 2002, right in here, okay? And look at what happens to GDP as we come out of the pandemic. And these numbers are all, there's one slowdown in this period right here, but we're at 3.2, 3%. And look where we are in the second quarter of 2025, 3.3% GDP increase. If times were normal and we didn't have the hangover of all the political disruption that weighs on all of us, people would be saying, wow, the economy's doing great. It's hitting on all 8 cylinders. It is hitting on all 8 cylinders. And one of the greatest indicators of this is the stock markets. We have made highs again this week that are all-time highs, and there's no end in sight. And these are smart people running smart algorithms that are trading globally on global platforms and are very attuned with which direction the economy is going in. So it's not the Pied Piper, it's the real thing. So let me talk about consumer sentiment, because this is something I'm going to encourage all of you when you go back to your offices and to your businesses. This is something you ought to pay a little attention to on a monthly basis. And it takes about 60 seconds a month to look at this. So there are 2 sources of coverage for consumer sentiment. One is the Conference Board, which has something called the Consumer Confidence Index. The other is the University of Michigan, and they have the Consumer Sentiment Index. As you all know, confidence and sentiment are basically the same thing. And take a look at what has happened here. And it's very interesting to follow these lines. As you can see here, of course, you go back to this 2020. Take a look at April, 130 down to 80 or so. You know what that was? COVID. That was the lockdown. And then things got a little better. This right here, by the way, guess what that is? All the stimulus money. all the free checks coming in the mail. And then by 2021, everybody's feeling better. The economy, there's a huge sharp rise as people start seeing. Now, this is sentiment. They're looking in the rear, they're saying COVID is in the rearview mirror. And then you'll see here, right here, this is the election, and this is the tariff discussion. So everybody got tired of hearing about the tariffs. So slowly but surely, because the economy's in good shape still, it starts to rise. A little dip again here and a little fall here. But my bet is this line continues upwards for the foreseeable future. Okay. This is by the way, that was, so that you know, that was the Conference Board's index. This is the University of Michigan's index, and here are the two overlaid. So you can see how carefully and accurately both track, even though there are two different sets of samples. I think, John, they sample over 1,000 people, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just been historically accurate going back 40 or 50 years that both have been doing this. This is my favorite slide. I'm going to show you how powerful the consumer is, okay? Every one of these black lines, dark gray lines, is a recession. And before every recession, consumer confidence takes a steep dive. So let's get to some of the more recent years here, and let's take a look. This is right here. Look at this, and look at this drop down to here. Does anybody know what this is? 9/11, okay? And then, of course, we recovered from that. We had some seesaws in here. This is the Great Recession, all right? 2008, 2009. And then here, you can see this small period. This is COVID. Come back out, and then back down again. So this is COVID. And we were on a strong recovery coming out of COVID, but the tariff discussion knocked everybody back down again. And all of this is important because if Walmart sales goes down or Ford Motor Company sales go down, the entire economy starts to slow down. Okay, this is an interesting one. And this is not a subjective view of things. This is very objective. You come home from work, you tear open your statement on your 401k. We don't do that anymore. It's all online, right? Nobody's opening envelopes anymore. But and you say, oh wow, I did pretty good last month, and oh wow, I've done pretty good the last year. So take a look over here into that corner, and you will see this orange line or pumpkin colored line is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And look how that number is growing up. And look at what happens, particularly in here. You'll see this is all very recent. This is the recent boom in the stock market here. And look at what happens to sentiment here. Sentiment is following the move up in the stock market because many Americans, most working Americans, have some kind of 401k or union pension plan or some plan to save for their retirement. I'm going to go through this real quickly. This is policy changes. We all know about this, but they're factors in our economy. We've got trade policy, monetary policy, and immigration policy. There's significant uncertainty about these because things continue to change and evolve every day, as you all are aware. So obviously we have tariffs on imports. We don't know what the final impact of that is going to be on the economy, but so far it looks like we're going to get through that relatively easily. The new administration has moved to impose tariffs on imports. 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports effective March 12th, so it's only been for a few months. 25% tariffs on imported autos and auto parts was implemented in April. And then, of course, we've got reciprocal tariffs. You know, the people who we are taxing us in return on their exports to our country. So they took effect on dozens of international trading partners. And the new reciprocal tariffs increased the baseline tariff rate across the globe to about 10%, with many countries experiencing a much higher percentage rate. Monetary policy. Federal Reserve interest rates, we still haven't heard yet, John, what happened today, but the Fed's meeting today, and we're supposed to see an interest rate decrease today, probably 25 basis points, but it could be more. The Federal Open Market Committee has held rates steady at 4.25 to 4.5% after 3 increases in late 2024. Again, the concern there is what kind of effect will tariffs have on the overall economy. The year-over-year inflation rate came in at 2.9% in August. This is the highest since January, and that is almost all attributable to tariffs flowing through the cost of goods that we sell. And as I said a minute ago, the Fed meets today. We were hoping to have an announcement for them before I got up on stage, but obviously they're still talking about it. And here's just a quick look at the Fed funds effective rate. And you can see this is very common and very interesting. This was the Great Recession, where interest rates basically went down to zero in an effort to try to stimulate borrowing and therefore improve the economy. That started to move back up again because the economy had recovered. But then we saw this steep drop in the rates down to this near zero. That again was COVID. Immigration policy, border security, we all know about that. Expanded and resumed border wall construction, not a surprise to anybody. Increased border patrol security. Deportations, we know about those mass deportation operations with increased ICE raids. This is starting to become an issue in the construction trades across the U.S. Because even some who are here legally with legal work papers are being sent back to their country. It's driving the construction industry a little crazy. Citizenship, birthright citizenship executive order is facing legal challenges. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the AVP Pulse Index in partnership with Rock Products. Rock Products has been publishing the Pulse, a construction industry economic report, and the AVP Pulse Index, a joint effort with our firm. So this is what it looks like. This is our September quarterly report, which has published, I think. Has it published yet? Just about to come out. Just about to come out. And I want to walk you through what this means. What we do is we take a number of very, very widely regarded metrics, and we run them through our own blender, as I call it, and we come out with what we call the Allen-Villere Partners Pulse Index. So these are what go into that. The Dodge Data Momentum Index, the Architecture Billings Index, the Construction Unemployment Rate, the National Association of Home Builders, Wells Fargo Housing Market Index, producer price increases for concrete products, PPI for construction sand, gravel, and stone, total construction spending, domestic crushed stone consumption, domestic sand and gravel consumption, housing starts, industry stocks, average price. These are the Martin Mariettas and Vulcans of the world, the Case-Shiller National Home Price Index. Let me go back. And what this does, I'm going to take you back a few slides here and show you this. So what this does is it gives us an output that we track. This is it here. And this is a rolling 36-month average. And what it's doing is it's just a measurement It's like an arrow. It's either pointed up or it's pointed down. And it gives you kind of what the fits and starts of how the construction economy is doing. But over the last 36 months, we're up currently in the month of September, up 1% on the index, okay? But that is 8.4% year over year and 18.1% over the last 36 months. So this measure says we are 18% better than we were 36 months ago in terms of the overall health and condition of the construction economy. So simply put, it's just like the Dow Jones or the S&P or the NASDAQ. It's just an index number that tells you which direction the construction economy is going in based on those inputs that we measure, those metrics we input. Okay, let me get back to my spot here. How much has the market recovered since April? We're going to talk about the stock market a little bit now. So there's been since April 8th, there's been a 32.1% increase in the S&P 500. It's got to make consumers feel good. The Dow Jones Industrials are up 21.8%. And the NASDAQ, heavily weighted towards tech stocks, the NVIDIAs and others that have performed so well, is up 45% since April. This is the kind of thing that drives consumer sentiment into a very positive direction. And this is just a look at, you can see what they call the Magnificent Seven stocks, which is 7 of the tech stocks that are leading out. 3 of them have 3, possibly 4, have over $1 trillion market capitalizations now. Okay, let's take a look at ready-mix concrete demand for the entire United States, as well as construction aggregate demand. So Dodge parses this information into a variety of different definitions. And you really have to go to Dodge to understand what each of these means. So in this case, this is maintenance and repair. This is what they're saying is going to happen nationally. I laugh at this because this looks like a business school, an MBA, a bunch of MBA students doing a business plan. And of course, their business plan shows the business going up steadily. But this is what maintenance and repair is expected to do between now and 2029. So this is going to be a great driver of growth for the ready-mix concrete business. Then there's non-building, and you'll see that in 2025, we've actually come down slightly this year with an expectation that 26, 27, 28 will all be very good, and then a slight dip in 29. And none of the projections go beyond 5 years. So we start with the current year of 25, and the projections go through 29. Non-residential. As you can see, we had this little dip here from 24 and expected to be through 27. That's interest rates that has driven one of the longest slowdowns in new housing starts that we've had since World War II. But by 28 and 29, we expect that that concrete production for non-residential will continue to occur. That is all, by the way, that is all. Non-residential is a lot of the infrastructure work that's associated with roads and bridges, et cetera. Residential, this is even better because it shows you can see what happened in 23. We saw a big dip as interest rates, well, from 21 to 23, there was a big dip in volumes that was driven by rising interest rates. It steadied out in 24. In 25, we expect to be close to where we were in 24. And then we'll see the climb up as interest rates are expected to come down. And here are the grand totals. So with the exception of the current 2025 year, we expect that overall concrete volumes will grow steadily up through the 2029 period. So for those of you who really follow numbers carefully, you will notice that these numbers on the left-hand side do not match the National Ready-Mix Concrete Association's published numbers. And the reason for that is this is all concrete that's produced, which includes a lot of self-performing, a lot of highway paving, and so forth. NRMCA is counting the concrete that we believe is poured out of the back of a mixer truck. So Colin Lopel and I have been talking about this for 25 years. So anyway, okay, let's look at aggregates. Very interesting. The bar charts look the same as concrete. Here you see maintenance and repair, the same business school steady eddy increase. Non-building, very similar to what we saw with concrete. Aggregate, obviously, concrete is a big pull-through of aggregate, and that can't come as any surprise. Non-residential, same as what we saw from 24 through 24 and 25. We see a slight downturn and then a gradual climb back in volumes. And then residential, same thing. As interest rates fall, production will rise in 26 through 29. And here are the grand totals again. So this is not inconsistent with the Geological Survey, by the way. I want to talk about technology. It's my favorite topic, okay? I've had a 52-year career, a 53-year career. I'm in the 53rd year of my career since college. There have been 3 tectonic shifts in our economy, and they drove innovation that served to change the world. I lived through all of these. I saw what it did. The first was the invention of the personal computer. The next was the deployment of cellular telephony. And the third was the advent of the internet. They all 3 drove productivity to new heights. Today we have another tectonic shift that has unfolded before us that will be as big as the first 3. Artificial intelligence, or AI. So if you are under 35 years of age, raise your hand. Okay, keep your hands up for a second, because you are the only ones eligible to answer this question, okay? What is this? It's a cell phone? Okay, it's called a bag phone. I had one of these. It's a gym bag with a motorcycle battery and an analog transceiver that was so hot it would burn a hole through the side of your bag, and a curlicue cord like the phones in your house, okay? And I can tell you, you have a cell phone, Andy? Are there any gray-haired guys in here that remember the bag phones that had to be? Look, I got a bunch of hands up. Okay. I want to ask you, did any of you think, when you were carrying that bag phone, that you would ever see this? I don't think anybody dreamed of this. I don't think anybody dreamed of this. And Steve Jobs did. But that is the promise of AI. We are in the bag phone era, and we don't know what this is in AI. It hasn't been discovered yet. So we don't know what this is. And all through the 90s, we had a tailwind in the economy as the internet began to develop from dial-up to broadband to fiber, or dial-up to DSL to fiber. And we saw it in the 70s with personal computers. We saw it in the 80s with cellular telephony. But I think that this alone, AI alone, is going to drive our economy forward for the next many years, easily another 10 years, without another slowdown. For all the appearances of rapid deployment and adoption, AI is in its infancy, similar to the bag phone. It took almost 25 years for the first crude cell phone to evolve into the iPhone. But the growth in AI's reach and capacity will happen at a much faster pace, and we will experience its influence throughout our lives within a few short years. And just like computers, cell phones, and the internet, it will drive productivity and positively influence the economy for years to come. As a result, it could be years before we see another recession. So here's my summary. The IIJA, which is still around and has a lot of money left in it, will continue to fuel volume and revenue in our industry and will likewise soften the blow of any economic or sentiment impacts brought about by the tariff shocks, the Israeli-Ukraine wars, housing softness, inflation, or interest rates. When the current threats abate and the economy returns to pre-tariff stability, get ready for a long, multi-year economic expansion. What could possibly derail this optimistic outlook? A black swan event. The chances of the economy, starting to falter are not zero. Nothing is ever zero. There is some percentage, and in my 53-year career, I've seen it over and over again. A black swan event is defined as an event that comes as a surprise, has a major effect, and is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact with the benefit of hindsight. Right? Big deal. They create an outsized impact of high profile, hard to predict, and rare events that are beyond the realm of normal expectations in history, science, finance, and technology. What are examples of a black swan event? Most of you have experienced these. The famous Greenspan 20% interest rate shocks of the 1970s and 80s. 9/11. The 2008 financial crisis. And of course, COVID. The prospect exists for a slowing economy because no economic risk is zero. But we don't believe it. We think it's extremely small. Construction generally, and construction aggregates, ready-mix concrete, precast concrete, and concrete products in particular, will thrive for the foreseeable future. Housing will slowly recover, adding volume to the only soft demand area in our industry. And I wish I knew what the timing of that is. Material margins will continue to expand as pricing strength continues in our industry. My only fear, a black swan event. That's the only thing between us and a lot of prosperity. So with that, thank you very much. You need a new iPhone. Okay, good. I've got time. I'm told by my boss here that I've got time for a few questions. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, please.
Hold on. Oh, sorry. No, you can use this. Oh, okay. Thank you. By the way, great presentation. Thank you. So I have a theory about this, and I want to see what you think about this. So the impact of AI, I have this feeling that we're going to, that white-collar work is going to have its own little recession, and it's going to be, the outsourcing force there is going to be AI. In fact, we're already seeing it. But at the same time, demand for blue-collar, skilled trade labor, for the reasons that you just articulated, are going up. What do you think of that, and how do you think the increased demand for labor and shrinking supply because of immigration policy is going to inform inflation in the industry in terms of some of the costs that we're going to experience in the industry?
Okay, so that's two questions. Let me answer the first one, which is, in my own opinion, I think that AI is going to expand the pool of white-collar employment, not contract it. And a perfect example, for those of us that remember this same conversation was being had in the early days of the internet, that the internet was going to wipe out all these white-collar jobs. Didn't happen. If anything, the internet broadened the number of white-collar jobs. I think the same thing will happen here with AI. Now, as it relates to blue-collar, that's a lot more nettlesome. I think it's a real issue, and there will be huge pressure on Congress to deal with this issue after the midterm elections, after these deportations, or about these deportations, after the midterm elections, when those guys are home campaigning and the owners of the businesses that write the checks for them say, you've decimated my workforce by 30% because you came in here and sent all of these guys home. So There's, to this day, there are illegals being employed in the construction industry all over the U.S. Pull up to any Home Depot or Lowe's parking lot, on a Monday morning at 7 a.m. and look at that. Now that has slowed down to a trickle to nothing because they're afraid to come out. But it's got to get fixed, and only Congress is going to be in a position to fix that, if they can get enough backbone to deal with what I think has been a very difficult issue for our industry, which is getting rid of the hard labor that builds everything around us. That in my case, my client's customer, my client as a ready-mix producer or as an aggregate producer, their customer are the ones that are placing the concrete, and it's being placed by immigrant labor. There's no question about that. I hope that answers your question. Yes?
Kind of on a similar note. Oh, perfect. Yeah, on a similar note, how do you see in the macro view if our the U.S. birth rate is about 1.6 births per woman right now, right? And that's below the replacement rate of about 2. So if 70% of our economy is driven by consumer spending and our population continues to decline, at one point, does that mean an overall long-term 100-year decline in the economy? I mean, is there a direct correlation there?
Well, I think you're absolutely right on your point, that it is a follow-up to this previous question, and your point is extremely well taken. And the last thing, we're a nation of immigrants. Nobody in this room didn't come here that doesn't have an ancestor in the background that came from another country. That's just a fact of life, unless you're a Native American. They're the only ones. So I would tell you that we need to reform immigration, and we've got to open our arms up to allow immigrants to come to America, seek employment. I'm talking about all types, all the really smart PhDs who are not getting in these days, that got educated at our universities and went back to their countries. We really have to reform our immigration policy. Population growth absolutely drives the economy. I did a presentation in 2018, and the premise of the presentation was, if you remember Rip Van Winkle, he went into the woods and he went to sleep for 30 years and he woke up and it was really a political story. The American Revolution had happened, and in the village where he was from, the tavern had not a picture of King George, but of George Washington, and he didn't understand all that. And so I had one that said, it's 2018. What if you wake up in 10 years? What will our industry look like? And population growth was a big factor in my expectations for the overall increases in volumes in ready-mix concrete and construction aggregates and concrete products. It has not panned out. It has not panned out. So we're nowhere near even what the U.S. Census Bureau was expecting back then. So, and not only is it not panning out, but we're sending others back to their countries. And so we're getting a 1-2 punch in a very negative way. So immigration reform has to happen. And I don't think we ought to be embracing illegals, but we certainly have to be able to attract people that are willing to come to this country and work very hard, swinging hammers and using nail guns, as we see all over the U.S. That's how we're going to move our economy forward. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. One is a comment or confirmation on AI, robotics, and medical engineering. I think they will absolutely do as you say and really be a massive contributor to maintaining economic growth. Where I see some differentiation in some of the numbers that you presented specifically in and around construction is right now there have been targeted policies for specific states for the infrastructure projects and developments that have already been approved. Many of those have either been retracted or paused. There's a lot of litigation. We don't know how that will turn out. Yes. But we see variation in that, and I would like your opinion on whether or not when you're looking at those numbers, you do break it down in those specific markets, some of which are some of the biggest markets in the country, and it is having a freezing effect, or it's certainly a regression.
We do. Let me explain. We actually do. We get Dodge Data and Analytics. Does anybody's company here subscribe to that? Okay, so you're familiar with it. You know, I'm the managing partner of our firm, and the subscription to that is the Ferrari I don't own. Okay, I just want you to know that. So, because it's really expensive. But we get the information sliced and diced down by state, by county, and by MSA. We can see it any way. So when we have a new client that comes to see us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, we can go to those counties that they service, and we can get what the outlook is. And all of the information is updated quarterly by them, so they are taking into consideration the same things. We've got a lot of uncertainty. I think it's temporary. I mean, when I say temporary, I think this, as the midterms campaign trails start, and the House has to, I mean, if you remember your history book, everybody in the House, all 435, get reelected every 2 years. And they're already having some tough conversations at their town halls in their districts. And I think that you're going to hear a lot of complaints about projects that have been turned off. I'm from New Orleans, okay? New Orleans is my home. Louisiana. Louisiana's had all kinds of highway work just whoop, cut off. And our governor loves Trump, and so he just, you know, swallows hard and takes it, you know? So I think as we get towards the midterms and then beyond the midterms, I think you'll see some of this money start to be freed up. And look, Trump's a very smart guy. This is going to come back to him over and over again. He's finally going to have to say, okay, maybe some of these cuts in some of these areas weren't such a good idea. Doge was a disaster. That was not the way to go about it. You know, and guess what? All those people that got let go are now contract employees for the federal government, which I don't know how we saved any money doing that. But anyway, any other questions? Yes, Don. My second favorite editor. I'm only saying that because Mark's on the stage.
For our audience here, when you, in your travels and when you go in to concrete and aggregate producers and look at the books, do you see a pretty consistent correlation between the level of investment in IT and their profitability?
There is no question that the most profitable businesses are, by their very nature, employing about as sophisticated IT system as one could have. And I'm thinking about one of our clients who was sold to CRH recently, who just did a fantastic job and had the best executive reporting system that we've ever seen in terms of the quality of information he was getting daily. We had a client who was a producer. This is probably the holy grail, and he was about a 1.2 million cubic yard producer, and he knew at 7 o'clock in the morning how much money he made yesterday. His systems were so, and they were all custom developed for himself. Most everybody runs the kind of systems that we are seeing here. And for those who are not keeping up to date with that, you're missing the opportunity to make the next step up in efficiency that comes, what comes with that is greater profitability. So there's no doubt, you're right, the best run companies are the ones who have the best systems in the background.